For the first time this millennium, the New York Knicks are going to the Eastern Conference Finals. I cannot believe I'm saying that. Wow. This is a shocker. This is truly a shocker. Now, I'm going to give some context here. I am a Miami Heat fan. I hate both the New York Knicks and the Boston Celtics. It's just I hate the Boston Celtics much more than I hate the New York Knicks. So I personally was rooting against the Celtics and I was hoping they would lose. However, I wasn't in support of the Knicks and I wasn't rooting for the Knicks. It was more of the lesser of two evils will prevail. And that ultimately happened. So the Knicks advanced to the conference finals. We got to talk about this series because, man, this was a shocker. The Boston Celtics were heavily favored to win this series, and they were one of the top candidates that was favored to get to the NBA Finals and win the championship. They were trying to do something that Larry Bird's Celtics was unable to do, and that's repeated champions. They were trying to repeat. They wanted to be special, and they had the talent to do so. But then they matched up with this New York Knicks team, and the fundamental issue with the Celtics was clearly showcased here. When the game is close and physical and the pressure is high, the Celtics tend to wane. It's what stopped them from winning a championship until last year. And yes, we all know how that ring last year looks. We're not going to talk about it here too much. We're not going to get into detail. But those injuries did affect how the series went with each from the first round to the second round to the conference finals. Those injuries that their opponents had faced definitely influenced the Boston Celtics' chance to get to the NBA Finals. But you know what? We're not here to really go into that or dwell into it or try to criticize. A ring is a ring. They got their championship. They already knew the criticism they were dealing with, especially Jason Tatum, who, again, was supposed to be the guy, is actually the guy for the Celtics, but people don't give him the respect he should be getting because you didn't get Jason Tatum being that dominant top 5 player in the postseason last year. They won a championship, but it was more about the teamwork. It was more about everybody coming together. Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown alongside Tatum, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard hitting half-court buzzer beaters. That's ultimately what helped them win the championship. And at the end of the day, the Eastern Conference Finals and NBA Finals MVP was not Jason Tatum. It was Jaylen Brown. So this postseason was supposed to be the time for Jason Tatum to prove himself, to really showcase once again and silence the doubters that he is a top 5 player. And it was supposed to be the moment for him to put in his candidacy to be the next face of the NBA. He played fantastic in that first round against the Orlando Magic, which was pretty impressive because the Magic are a great defensive team. I think they were the second or third best defensive team heading into the postseason. So he had that great first round matchup. This second round matchup was expected to test him, and boy was he tested, and he did not do well. Through the first 3 games, he did poorly. So, first 3 games, chaos, nothing but chaos. Game 1 and Game 2 at TD Garden. Boston with home court advantage and expected to win. They had 20-point leads in both Game 1 and Game 2, and yet somehow they blew both of those leads and lost both of those games. For the first time in NBA history, a team blew back-to-back 20-point leads to lose the games. Blowing a 20-point lead in back-to-back games and losing is crazy. For the first time in NBA history, you see that happen in the playoffs. We've never seen a moment where a team blows back-to-back 20-point leads in the playoffs and finds a way to lose. And we've never seen that happen to a team that was highly favored and at home. So it's crazy that the Knicks were able to pull that off. They showed their toughness, they showed their grit, their physicality, but most importantly, they showed their resiliency. And that is something that has kind of been a weakness for the Boston Celtics. When they go up against those resilient teams that continue to fight even when the lead's big, that becomes a problem. When those threes aren't hitting, you start seeing some very, very, very confusing and very concerning things about the Boston Celtics. At times, when the threes aren't hitting, it just looks like the Celtics don't know what to do. They don't drive to the basket. They can't get anything going offensively. They look lost out there. If those threes aren't hitting, offense is not fluid for the Celtics. And then Joe Mazzulla just doesn't seem to know what to do if the three-point shots aren't hitting. If the math isn't mathing for them, they don't know what to do. Because they follow the math of the threes. Threes are more than two. We're going to take these threes. If the math is not mathing and the wide open threes aren't being hit, the Celtics are lost. And that's ultimately what allowed the Knicks to get back and steal game 1 and 2. So now you get to game 3. We're in Madison Square Garden. The Knicks have a 2-0 lead with a chance to go up 3-0. And the Boston Celtics, for the first time in this series, got a 20-point lead, held on to the 20-point lead, and won the game. So they make it 2-1. Then you get to game 4. And I can tell you this right now, as a Heat fan, I was ready to celebrate the downfall of the Boston Celtics because I was hoping they would lose this series. I was going to celebrate. I was going to be sitting here with champagne celebrating the downfall of the Boston Celtics. But game 4 is the reason why I can't do so. Game 4 was the Jason Tatum game. Jason Tatum finally showed up. This was his best performance of the postseason. In a do-or-die game with a chance to go tie the series, heading back to Boston, Jason Tatum showed up. He struggled a little bit early on, but he got himself together and was really clutch in the second half, especially that fourth quarter, man. He was going bar for bar with Brunson and anybody else. He had 40-plus points, man. He was balling. He was trying to keep his team alive in the game. Nobody was helping him in the fourth quarter. It was the Jason Tatum show. He needed help. They're down. Game's winding down. And then Jason Tatum tears his Achilles. Praise up to Jason Tatum, like we said. He's gone through surgery. It was a success. And now he begins the healing and rehab process. So, we'll see how things go for Tatum. But him going down ultimately led to them losing that game. But if you were watching how that game was going, Jason Tatum wasn't going to be able to do it on his own, and nobody else was helping them. The Knicks probably would have taken that game no matter what, because nobody else was doing anything besides Tatum. And Tatum against Brunson and Bridges and Josh Hart, it just wasn't going to be enough. So they were ultimately going to lose that game with or without Tatum on the court. It's just unfortunate he suffers a potential career-altering injury. So once again, prayers up for Tatum. But the Knicks go on to win game 4. They're up 3-1, and this series is basically over because there's no Jason Tatum. And once you go up 3-1, you're pretty much going to win the series about 99% of the time. All right? So we get to game 5. It's in Boston. The Celtics are already depressed because Jason Tatum's gone, and they have to go on without him. They put up an amazing performance in game 5, That showed the resiliency of them, and it showcased the strength of them. They rallied behind Tatum being gone. They rallied behind his injury and said, you know what, we're going to win this one for Tatum. We're going to win this one for Jason Tatum. The fans rallied around the team, and it was an incredibly inspiring game 5. The threes were hitting. Derek White and Jaylen Brown were carrying this team and got them a game 5 victory. And everybody sat back and said, all right, Knicks, you know how this is going. If you do not figure this out, if you do not go out there and ball out and handle your business in your building in game 6, you're going to lose this series in 7 because the Boston Celtics will go back home and those threes will be hitting. So tonight, the pressure was on. Tonight, expectations were placed on the Knicks. Tonight was the most anticipated matchup of the Knicks in 25 years. Tonight's game at Madison Square Garden was the most important game this millennium, and they had to win. And let me tell you, they went out there and they handled business. With all the pressure on them, with all the expectations on them, with the anticipation that they're going to get it done, with the nerves that was being showcased by some of the people in the media in regards to whether or not this team's going to close it out tonight, the Knicks went out there and handled business. First quarter was competitive. The Knicks and the Celtics were going at it. But once we got to the second quarter, the Knicks got comfortable. They got in their groove. They extended their lead, and they never looked back. They completely dominated the Boston Celtics. Meanwhile, the Celtics, they just looked lost out there. There was no Jason Tatum. The offense looked conflicting. Jaylen Brown fouled out in 3 quarters. Derek White didn't do anything. They were lost. You weren't getting much from Pritchard. You weren't getting much from Derek White. You weren't getting much from Holiday or Porzingis. Porzingis is already going through something. We don't know what he's going through. He's going through something. He hasn't been himself all postseason. It's just been a struggle to get him on the court. Drew Holiday did virtually nothing this series. It's just too much to overcome. Once you lost Tatum, you knew it was over. The Knicks understood that this team was at their lowest point and that the expectations was on them and the pressure was on them to deliver. And they didn't waste time. They went out there, delivered, got the job done. They won 119-81. They're advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years to take on the Indiana Pacers. A rematch of last year's second round matchup in which the Indiana Pacers beat the New York Knicks in 7 games to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. So we're going to get a rematch, but this time it's for a trip to the NBA Finals. This is going to be a good one, ladies and gentlemen. We can say it right now. Both of these teams aren't even remotely close to being what they were last year. That team last year with the Knicks was heavily talented, but their biggest issue was staying healthy. And in that playoff series against the Pacers, the Knicks were not healthy. They were not healthy at all. Injuries happened before the series, during the series, and towards the end of the series, everything was cooked. Once Brunson broke his hand, it was done. They had no shot to beat the Pacers in that Game 7. So it was cooked. They were a team that was limping their way through these games. And even if they somehow would have beat the Pacers, they would have got swept by the Celtics because everybody was hurt. So the Knicks ultimately lost due to injuries. But this year, they're healthier and they're better. You went out and you got Mikal Bridges. You brought Cat here. They added pieces to this team that is supposed to help take them over the hump. And let me tell you, when it comes to Mikal Bridges, he's absolutely living up to everything the Knicks wanted him to live up to. In this postseason, he is one of the primary reasons why they're in the conference finals. Game 1 and 2, he balled out in the fourth quarter, and he was the clutchest defensive player. He shut down Brown and stole the ball away from him in game 1, and then he clamped Tatum and knocked the ball out of his hands in game 2. This dude, Mikal Bridges, has been clutch, and he's done everything the Knicks had hoped he would do in these type of situations to get them to this point. And I can say this right now, this is one of the most even trades we've seen in recent history because the Timberwolves and the Knicks traded each other their pieces. Julius Randle goes to the Timberwolves as well as DiVincenzo, and then you get Cat coming over here to New York. And at the end of the day, it worked out. The Timberwolves are in the Western Conference Finals. The Knicks are in the Eastern Conference Finals. It worked out. That's an even trade. Anyway, the Knicks were hurt. This year they're healthy, and they're ready to really do some damage. And if they can get their revenge on this Pacers team, they will be in the NBA Finals for the first time since 1999. And if they can stay healthy, they have a real chance to win the championship. On the flip side, you've got the Indiana Pacers who beat this team in 7 games last year. And the Pacers weren't this incredibly impressive team last year. But they were able to get to the conference finals. People had concerns and questions about this Pacers team this year. But I can tell you, if there's anything you can say about the Pacers, it's that defensively, they are leagues better this year compared to what they were last year. They're a better overall team offensively than they were last year, or at least more versatile in their scoring, because they've got guys that they can rely on. Halliburton can do his thing. Siakam, Turner, Nembhard, Nesmith, Toppin. They've got guys that they can trust to be able to go do something offensively. So it's a team effort. But what they do defensively is why they're sitting here in the conference finals. What they're able to do defensively, the pace that they run offensively, they somewhat match that pace defensively. They swarm guys at the three-point line. And they're very fast and efficient with switching. The Pacers are a better team defensively this year than they were last year. So they're better set up to match up against the Knicks compared to what they were last year when they still found a way to beat them, though that Knicks team was injured. So both teams are healthy. No, also another thing, Mathurin was out, especially in the conference finals. He wasn't there. So Mathurin's healthy. Both sides are healthy. Both sides are a better team in comparison to what they were last year. So we've got one hell of a matchup. I think this is going to go 7 games. And you know me, as a Heat fan, I appreciate, to an extent, I guess, I appreciate what the Knicks did in eliminating the Boston Celtics. But it's time for the Knicks to bow out. I am taking the Pacers in 7 games. I am not picking the Knicks. There is no way. The Heat fan in me couldn't tolerate the Knicks in the finals. So I am picking the Pacers to win this in 7 games. In reality, I think this is going to be a 6 or 7 game series no matter what. I just don't know how it's going to go. But I'm not picking the Knicks. I am taking Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers in 7 games over the New York Knicks. They're going to get it done. They're going to the NBA Finals, and we'll see what happens there. On the flip side, Boston, your championship hopes end here. You were chasing after something really special. You wanted to do something Larry Bird's Celtics weren't able to do, and that was repeat. This was your opportunity. You were favored to go win the championship. You were one of the favorites. You were favored to actually get out of the Eastern Conference. And unfortunately, you were unable to do so. Excuse me. You were unable to do so. To make matters worse, Tatum suffers a potential career-altering injury. Boston's title's hopes immediately close with this core. This core is not coming back. Changes will have to be made, especially because Tatum is not going to be there for the 2026 season. A whole year without Tatum means you're not competing next year. So now you've got to get ready for 2027. That's the mindset. So what's going to happen? Holiday and Porzingis, they might not be on this team next year. Al Horford, he might not be here by the time Tatum gets back. I don't know how much basketball he's got left in him, but he might not be here too. I'm not saying one or both are going to be gone, but I'm not 100% sure that Jaylen Brown or Derek White will be on this team by the time Tatum is 100% and good to play basketball again. It's a huge offseason for the Boston Celtics, and they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do moving forward. It's a huge offseason. Their championship title hopes diminished. They should be happy they got one. You're satisfied with that at least. You got something out of this core, but it's time. Time for a change. So we'll have to see how this is going to go for the Celtics. But as for the Knicks and Pacers, let's do it. 7 games. The Knicks do have the home court advantage, and I believe they actually are favored in this series. They became one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to get to the. Actually, I think they became one of the favorites to win the championship and became the favorite to get to the NBA Finals because of what they did against Boston. So most likely the Knicks are going to be favored in this series. They also have home court advantage, so we'll see what happens, man. This is new territory for the Knicks in this millennium. They don't know what it feels like to be in this situation, but now they are. Now they are, and we got to see what this core can do against the Pacers. It's going to be one hell of a series, and I cannot wait to see it go down. Anyway, guys, that's all I got to say about this. Knicks get the win. They eliminate the Celtics in 6. They advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they will have a rematch with the Indiana Pacers for a chance to go to the NBA Finals. So we'll just have to see what happens there. But that's all I got for you guys. With that being said, we're going to head on out of here. Be sure to stay safe, and peace out.